Today on the Daily Scoop podcast from the Scoop News Group. The House AI Task Force releases its final report with an eye for future work with the Trump administration. And Adele Merritt has been named CIO of the National Institutes of Health. It's Wednesday, December 18th, 2024. Welcome to the Daily Scoop podcast, where you'll hear the latest news and trends facing government leaders. I'm the host of the Daily Scoop podcast, Billy Mitchell. Thanks so much for joining me. One quick programming note before we get into the headlines. This will be the final week of Daily Scoop podcast episodes in 2024. After we close things out on Friday, December 20th, we'll be off through the new year, returning to kick off 2025 on January 2nd. We've had an amazing 2024 with you and can't wait for what's ahead. Thanks so much for being part of such a special year. Now, let's get into today's top headlines. House AI Task Force members on Tuesday touted the long-awaited release of their report outlining recommendations to Congress on the federal government's adoption of AI, while confirming that lawmakers are in conversation with the incoming administration about the very same topics. The nearly 300-page report digs into a plethora of areas that the emerging technology touches, including the government's own use of AI, along with recommendations concerning AI governance and the AI workforce. Congressman Jay Obernolte of California, co-chairman of the task force, said during a press conference Tuesday that legislators and the incoming Trump administration are discussing what could be done to the executive order that the Biden White House released last fall, what items need legislative action, and how efforts might be harmonized between the legislative and executive branches. Obernolte told FedScoop after the press conference that he's, quote, very happy and impressed that the incoming administration is paying so much attention to the issue and delighted that they've named an AI czar, which he said indicates that they share the belief that AI is going to be transformative and that they need to engage on this topic. In other news, Adele Merritt has been named top IT official for the National Institutes of Health, giving the agency a permanent chief information officer for the first time in roughly 2 years. Merritt, who was most recently CIO of the intelligence community, began her roles as CIO and director of the agency's Office of the Chief Information Officer on Monday, NIH Director Monica Bertagnolli said in a written announcement. According to Bertagnolli, Merritt comes to NIH with more than 20 years' experience in cyber and national security operations and has held positions across the government intelligence community. Merritt, a mathematician, was also previously the Department of Energy's principal deputy CIO for cyber and has held senior positions on the staff of the White House's National Security Council. Merritt takes over for Dennis Papula, who served as the acting CIO and acting director of the OCIO at NIH since January 2023, following the retirement of NIH's longtime CIO, Andrea Norris. Papula similarly has a new role as the new CIO of the Administration for Strategic Preparedness and Response, which is also part of the Department of Health and Human Services. He started that role December 15th. The announcement comes a few weeks after HHS named Jennifer Wendell as its permanent CIO. Wendell had been serving as acting CIO since Carl Mathias departed the agency for a role at NASA nearly a year ago. For more news at the intersection of the federal government and technology, make sure to visit fedscoop.com. Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of the Daily Scoop podcast, available on all podcast platforms. If you've already rated the podcast on your platform of choice, thanks so much. High ratings and good reviews of the show help more people to find it. The Daily Scoop podcast is a production of the Scoop News Group in Washington, D.C. Adam Butler and Carlin Fisher help put the show together, and the entire Scoop News Group team contributes. We'll be back tomorrow with more top headlines. Until then, I'm your host, Billy Mitchell. Thanks so much for listening.